It is at 5:30. I've got this thing.
Can't hear you.
Okay, you should be able to hear him
Can you
now.
hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Now you gotta turn your volume down. All right. Once again, this is a pretty general slideshow presentation. I really am looking for a lot of back and forth between getting your questions answered. And so feel free to put your questions in the chat if you're on Zoom, and Courtney will relay them to me, and we can have a cyber dialogue. And then for those in the room, we can just have a normal, beautiful human interaction. So once again, my name's Dave DeWitt. I own Dave's Greens in Truro. I've been farming on the Cape for 38 years, as well as California. Um, I also help manage Allendale Farm in Brookline, Mass, and Jamaica Plain. So I've got years of large commercial agriculture under my belt, all the way down to small scale farming. I run a plant nursery. I grow hundreds and hundreds of tomato plants every year and sell them at my farm. I do two farmers markets, the Churro Farmers Market, the Wolfley Farmers Market. I have what's called a CSA program, Community Supported Agriculture, and I have about 19 restaurant accounts. And that's pretty much where my outlets are. I only sell my produce at the farmers markets and through the CSA. I sell plants at our plant stand on Holsbury Road in Churro, which will be open April 15th, it looks like, and maybe April 30th. And I'll have a full array of tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, all the things to start your garden, herbs and flowers as well. So I'm going to get started here. We're going to just go through the quick basics here. Maybe. Here we go. Tomato varieties. There are two types of tomatoes. There's a determinate and an indeterminate variety. Okay. There's a significant difference between the two. So you really want to make sure you're getting the right one for your that for your needs. A determinate tomato is short and compact and a little bit bushy. But the main difference with that is that their crop pretty much all ripens at the same time. So if you want to have a successive crop of tomatoes and you're using determinate varieties, you have to find which ones are early harvesting, mid ripening, and late ones. So you can have a continuous supply throughout your season. There are certain determinate varieties that I do grow that I find are quite efficient in their earliness. And they don't typically require quite as much staking, which is sometimes a lot of work for people. So there's some real benefits to that. Some of them will be strong enough to hold themselves up without stakes. So if you find the right ones, Jet Star is one of those that you can get away with, and then some of the plum tomatoes. Indeterminate is the vining type. So it's going to just keep on getting taller and taller as the season progresses. And it definitely will need staking. As it continues to grow, it puts out flowers, and each flower then, produces a fruit throughout the process. So the important thing to rely when you're doing indeterminate varieties is it sometimes takes a little bit of pruning. We're going to talk about pruning a little bit to get the most fruit. It will put a lot of flowers out, but it's going to continuously be putting out a lot of vegetative growth and vining up. So a lot of energy gets to continue growing. Whereas with the determinate, once it kind of grows, then it sets its fruit and then it has time to ripen it. So pruning and some selective pruning of the flowers to get rid of some flowers to slow the production down a little bit and really get the ones you want to focus on. But that's indeterminate varieties are a great way to get through the season, throughout the whole season with just one type of tomato. So in a minute, we're going to talk about, let's see if this works now. Nope. These are just your typical varieties of tomatoes. We have our cherry tomatoes, which everyone loves, beefsteak style, sometimes called sandwich type. And then you have salad type, which are usually a little bit smaller, but bigger than a cherry. And then you have plum tomatoes, which are typically used for canning and cooking in the sauces. So those are your basic types of varieties of tomatoes. The word tomato is not coming off my tongue today here. I'm not. But this is the next slide here is what a lot of people like to talk about or want to learn about. Heirloom tomatoes and hybrid tomatoes. Okay. So heirloom tomatoes, to be an heirloom tomato, it has to be what's called open pollinated. Okay. I'm not going to get into the genetics of it all, but if it's not open pollinated, it's not an heirloom tomato. It also generally speaking, it's been passed on for generations. It doesn't have to be generations. There are new heirloom style open pollinated tomatoes being bred all the time. The thing that's nice about it is when you're going to try to save seeds from a tomato, you need to have an open pollinated tomato to do that. You can't save the seeds from a hybrid. So if you're interested in saving seeds, you need to have an heirloom or open pollinated variety. Now, the reason why it was passed on for generations was because of flavor, texture, color, all the various attributes to a tomato. So they weren't bred for disease resistance. They weren't bred to be shipped from California to Cape Cod. They're meant to be on a farm, on a home garden, passed over the fence to your neighbor. They can save the seeds and continue on the process. So by far, that's predominantly what I grow is heirloom tomatoes on my farm. I grow only 3 hybrids. That's it. Everything else I grow is an heirloom style tomato. I do like to save tomato seeds So that's part of it. A hybrid tomato is basically taking two different plants and then breeding them together to try to get a hybrid vigor, which is a strong plant. But you're taking two different tomatoes and you're breeding them together, that then typically have more disease resistance. They have a longer shelf life typically. They have, typically a more firm skin. Sometimes they can, it's a little bit more consistent. Where with heirlooms, you can get a brandy wine that's 3 pounds, and you can get a brandy wine that's 1 pound on the same plant at the same season. So it's good to have, if you're going to go for the hybrids, part of it is consistency, which is nice. The hybrids that I grow, actually, I only grow two hybrids now. One of them is Jetstar. Jetstar is a very old plant tomato. It's about that big around, perfectly smooth and red. It ripens in the field really well. I can continuously I do a couple plantings of it so I can get a continuation of a crop, but it's a very dependable, very tasty hybrid tomato that is critical for my markets. It's something I just know I can depend on every time. And then it rivals with flavor with a lot of my heirloom flavor varieties. The other hybrid tomato I grow is something called Sun Gold Cherry. And that's the best tasting cherry tomato there is, in my opinion, and in many, many people's opinion. So the downside to the hybrids is you can't save seeds. If you plant a hybrid seed, you'll get one of various phenotypes, and they're typically weak yields. You don't get the yield anymore. You don't get the hybrid vigor is a term that is used when we're talking about breeding. So it's important to just remember, like, what do you want out of your tomato? What do you want to grow? What do you like? And those considerations are really important to make because that's going to kind of dictate what you're looking for. If you're just looking to grow a whole bunch of tomatoes to make and put up tomato sauce, then growing a whole bunch of San Marzano plum tomatoes, having the crop come in at once and just getting it done, that would suit that need. But if you want to have cherry tomatoes that you're picking all season, maybe you have kids or grandkids, and or you just like to go out in the garden and pick a couple handfuls. You want to know, what do you like? And usually, I just had my seed talk the other day in garden planting, but we can talk about gardening all day, but what matters is what you want to grow. That's the most important thing for you, is the stuff that you want to grow. So, think about your space. Consider, like, what kind of, I have 9 acres, so I can grow a lot of tomatoes, but you don't have 9 acres, most likely. So are you growing in containers? Do you have a height restriction? Do you not want to do all the work of trellising and pruning? Think about the things that you need. Think about your sun, where it is. Can you give it enough sun? That kind of stuff. And then your climate, like, if it's an early climate and you have a short window of time, then you might want to get something quick that's going to be harvested early enough. On the climate thing, when I started farming in 1987 in Truro, we would put our tomatoes out on Memorial Day. That was our that's the day we put out the tomatoes, right? So at that point, we were what's called our frost USD zone. We were zone 5. Okay. Now, 38 years later, whatever it is, we are zone 7B. Okay. So over the years, I've been planting earlier and earlier and earlier. And we've actually now started planting 2 years ago. We put our first early variety it comes out of Alaska. It's called Glacier. And then I have another one called Moscovich. It comes out of Russia. And they are very early and hardy and can handle a little cold. We've now started planting those on May 1st. Okay, so we have global warming's here, so let's embrace it and do what we can. In a few years, I'll be having a talk about bananas growing, and I'm looking forward to that day because yes.
Say that you are putting it in or growing starting at May 1st, you mean seedlings? So you're transplanting?
I'm transplanting outdoors.
It's planting
Outdoors, yep.
May 1st. Okay.
Yeah. So those plants are started 6 to 8 weeks before that. So consider about your situation. Everyone's situation is different. Everyone's tomato needs are different, some people don't like cherry tomatoes, some people don't like plum tomatoes. So find out what you're looking for. Get a good reputable seed company. I'm going to show you my seed companies that I use. And then you can, get ready to go. And these are what we need. Site preparation and planting. Tomatoes need sun. They need like 8 hours of sun. So some people are like, I got sun, but then I find out later that they really only have 4 hours of sun or 5 hours or 6 hours of sun. And you really need full sun all day, like the best you can get. That's going to help with yield. It's going to help with production. It's going to help with ripening, but it's also going to help with disease prevention too, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So once tomatoes get in the shade and they're a little cooler and it's a little moister, it's just the beginning of could be of the disease problems. So I'm not sure who's zooming in, but soil preparation is always going to be the most important thing. Everything starts in the soil. Soil is the basis of every garden and every farm. That should be your main focus, any type of gardening you're doing. Always focus on growing soil first and get the soil good. And over time, it will get better, but you have to have good fertile soil. Tomatoes need drainage. So we don't have a problem with that on Cape Cod because we're growing on a sandbar. But it wants to be fertile, well-drained soil in full sun. Okay. Um, and I wrote in soil preparation, you're always going to be wanting to add compost and mulches and just getting organic matter back into your soil, particularly on Cape Cod. Because here on Cape Cod, because we have so much what's called macro pore space in our soil, the organic matter, which is just anything that was once living, is organic matter. Okay. Compost, manure, leaves, grass clippings, whatever it is. If it was once living and you put it in your soil, it's organic matter. It will build. But with our large volumes of oxygen in our soil, our organic matter will oxidize very quickly. I have some landscape clients who will be like, well, yeah, when we built the house and we had Bayberry come and they put down a bunch of compost. And I said, well, when was that? And I'm like, that was like 8, 10 years ago. I'm like, well, that's not the way it works. That's every single year you have to add organic matter to your garden on Cape Cod and anywhere for that matter. You have to just keep on adding it and building the soil. What you're trying to do is foster what's called the soil food web. It's all the little critters underneath us and the microbes and all the fungi and the protozoas and the diatoms. They're the ones that do all the work. We do some work above ground, but without them down low the ground, without the nematodes and the fungi, forget it. We're not going to have any food. So constantly be thinking about soil building, soil building, soil building. We're very lucky that we have salt marsh hay here on the Cape and seaweed. So that stuff, just keep using it as mulch. We're going to talk about mulch in a little bit, but that is organic matter. So I no longer suggest using cardboard if you're starting a new garden. People like to put cardboard down, and there's something called lasagna layer composting where you make layers and cardboard can be part of that layer. Cardboard has microplastics in it, so we want to stay away from cardboard. If you're going to use newspaper, it has to be black ink only. Our newspaper industry runs on soy ink as long as it's black. So far, they're saying that's okay. So transplanting your seedlings. We start our seed, if anyone here start stuff indoors on their own, yeah, a couple of you. Typically, I say about 6 weeks before you put them out. May 1st is a little risky still, but May 15th is pretty much now. We can plant May 15th regularly and not having any worries of frost. And it's also the soil temperature is what really matters. I mean, we put a cold hardy crops down on May 1st, but it doesn't do much growing because it's really the soil temperature that has to warm up the most. So when you're putting out your tomato seedlings, I should have a diagram or something. What the important thing to remember is that you really want to bury the stem. Has anyone ever buried the stem of your tomato plants? So let's say that this is my pot. I'm not sure if you people on on Zoom can see it. And here comes your tomato plant up here, okay? So up here's tomato plant. This is the pot with the roots. So this is the top of the plant up here. Over here is one of the side shoots. You're going to snip with the scissors or you're going to pull that off. You're only going to leave the top two nodes of leaf. Everything below it, you're not going to get any fruit out of there anyways. So you're going to bury it all the way up to the bottom of those top of that second node. A node is where the plant stem branches off and makes a branch. That's called a node. And tomatoes are easy to see because nodes get swollen. So snap off the lower branches. I only leave actually one branch, one node, but I don't want to frighten you guys. So go to the second node, take everything off. Don't cut it there, but you want to strip off the leaves so the root ball is still intact. And then you want to bury it all the way down in the ground until right to the top of that leaf, that second leaf, that very all the way down. What happens is that the stem that you now buried in the soil will grow adventitious roots really quickly at those node sites, and it'll make for a stronger plant. It gets a lot more what's called anchor roots, and it also starts to send off feeder roots. So you're going to get a plant that is shorter and stockier and a little bit stronger. Some people say you get earlier harvest. I don't really believe that's true. But what the key point is you're taking your root potential from this pot that you have it full of roots. Now you've increased it to, let's say, this much root potential, and they will root very quickly. So, in the old day, a lot of times you'll see people talking about laying them in a trench, lay the stem down in a trench, and then bend the tip up, and then plant it back. I don't do that anymore because I've snapped enough as I bend them in my life that I don't do that anymore. I just get either a trowel if it's not a big plant, but if it's a big plant this big, you can still bury it. You're going to strip it all the way up, get a post hole digger, straight hole straight down, fill it up with some good hippie groovy compost and stuff and fertilizer, plant this thing in there, and then backfill it all up. And it'll just root out like crazy. It's really, really important to bury your stems on your plants. That's the biggest takeaway from this entire talk right there. That's the biggest advice I can give you is making sure that you bury that stem. It's a tried and true. Some varieties you'll have to do less staking, so it's really the most important thing you can do to your tomato plant is to bury those stems. And then the second thing, which I don't have on here, I think it might be in pruning, but at the same time, if you see some flowers up in that area, you probably won't because you'll probably be pruning them off the bottom. But we take our first set of flowers and we pinch them off. We don't let the first set of fruit go. We want to continue to push that plant into vegetative production to get more vegetative growth before we start letting it set too many flowers. Spacing. So spacing is important, particularly, I mean, when you're deciding if you're going to grow a determinate tomato or an indeterminate tomato. Indeterminates, bushy, sprawly, tall, they just go crazy, right? The indeterminates. The compact ones, the determinate ones are a little bit more compact. So you can actually get them a little closer. Okay. But all in all, we're going to talk about disease in a little bit. And we need airflow around our plants. We don't really want too many plants touching each other if we don't have to. We need some good airflow. So making sure you have enough room to properly space them. We actually grow our tomatoes 36 on center. So 3 feet apart from each other on center is how we space them. All right. Supporting and training. Staking in cages. Everyone has their various things. Whether it's one of those cone-shaped cages, stakes, it just be one stake. If you're going to do a stake, you really want to make sure you have the right fastener that's going to fasten it to the stake. At garden centers, you'll see little plastic like pruning, I don't know what they call it, but comes in a roll, like a roll of tape. And it's plastic, it's not sticky, but it's loose, it's like a ribbon almost, and just loosely tied off. You're gonna want to go up and around a node and secure it so it doesn't slide up and down that, when you tie it off. I use uh I don't know if women still wear nylons anymore, but nylons, if you get your hands on it, is a really great. My mom used to have a lot of nylons, and I would get all of her ripped ones. She'd save them for me for the year, and then we cut them up into strips. But that's a really great tomato a tie to tie off a tomato plant because it can let air and water through, and it kind of breathes and it stretches with the plant, and with the wind blowing, it stretches. So you don't want to get a tight string and tie it real tight because it will girdle the plant, will slow down production, and then it could actually break the plant and snap it one good windstorm. So really want to make sure that you have the right stuff to prune it with, to stake it with, I mean. So anyone familiar with what a sucker is on a plant? So the plant's growing up, and it will have a branch will come out, and then right at that node, another little branch will come out in the middle. Right, yeah, but between the right here, right? It'll come up like right through here. Now that is a sucker. That's not going to fruit. It's never going to give you any fruit. But what it's going to do is it's going to take the energy away from the plant. Okay. And you're going to get more leaf, which is potentially going to increase your potential for diseases. So in the early part of the year, you could take that, prune out the suckers and stick it in some soil and root it, and it will have another tomato plant. So it's a very efficient way of propagating them by using the suckers. So now, if I'm growing an acre of tomatoes, am I getting all the suckers? No, I don't get through all of them. But if you only have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 tomato plants, it's definitely worth going out there every couple days and just pinching off the suckers. Obviously, you can go on the internet and see what the picture of a sucker looks like. But just remember, removing the suckers will encourage growth. It'll help with early ripening a little bit quicker. And then, sometimes we'll just prune for structure. Like if it starts getting a little wieldy, I'll prune just to kind of contain it. And if you see that you've got a whole string of great looking tomatoes and you've got a bunch of these branches that are off that have maybe 1 or 2 tomatoes that aren't doing that well, sometimes it's better just to prune those out and get that energy to the other ones, to the other tomatoes. Some tomatoes you can pinch the top and let them branch off. Okay, that's just pinching them. Sometimes the pinching method that will help promote more fruit set. Particularly these are with the hybrids. I mean the determinants. So it's important to get them off the ground. There's plenty of times where we've grown tomatoes and just let them on the field and lay them on the ground and just come and pick them. Obviously, disease, mice, slugs, snails, rabbits, like it just does it. You're just asking for trouble. So get them up off the ground. If you're not into staking and doing trellising and stuff, then look for the determinate varieties, the more compact ones. You'll have a little bit better luck with those. And maybe those could just have like one stake as opposed to a cage. I like what's called hog wire. We just get them on rolls and we cut them. We just make a big circle around it, and some zip ties to hold the ends together. And that's our tomato cage. If you get a big roll, it's a lot cheaper than going and getting those cone shaped things at the nursery where they're now like, I don't know, $5-6 a piece. I don't know how much they are, but they're a lot. So just making one big circular round. Obviously finding what you can, certainly at the churro. Well, no, you're not allowed to pick at the churro dump anymore. But if you could find a spot where you can find some old chicken wire that someone's thrown away, there's all sorts of ways of caging your plants. But it's an important thing to do. Oh, one other thing I do for pruning. So I've buried the stem, it's growing. I've pinched that first flower set off. And then as it's growing, I will what I call upskirting. So we'll get rid of the bottom couple branches so that the stem comes up and there's a lot of airflow from the ground above the tomato, like the first few branches. So there's, soil doesn't wash back up on there. A lot of our diseases are soil-borne diseases, that come with a sprinkler or the rain and things like that. So I kind of prune off the bottom few branches just to get a nice strong stem and then all the leaf and all the other branches. That's a little technique that's been working well for me for a long time. So watering and fertilizing. We're going to talk about stuff in a little bit, but watering needs to be consistent. Okay. It doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to dry out and it doesn't need to get super wet. The key to growing tomatoes is consistent watering. Okay. I encourage try to come up with some form of drip system. Every homeowner, even if you only have 2 plants in a pot, they have systems, irrigation systems to hook up to a little drip system. The goal here is to keep the leaves and foliage dry. Never get them wet. Rain's going to get them enough. You don't want to add to it. We're going to talk about diseases, but you really want to get the soil wet, but consistent. Okay. Not soggy, really wet, but nice and consistent.
One of our attendees is saying that the branches of her tomato plant always reach down and touch the soil. Is that because it's not supported enough?
Yes. So the question was, one of our listeners, her branches fall down and touch the bottom of the ground and lay there. Yes, that you don't have strong enough staking. Maybe you need to tie them up. Actually, not just put them in a cage, but actually tie them and support them to the cage. But another good reason why you want to prune those first bottom branches and leave that open so it doesn't touch the ground, because that's where your disease is going to start. Late blights, septoria, those are all things that come from the soil-borne. So we really want to keep a little space between the soil and the first set of branches. Not a lot, like 12 inches is plenty. You might sacrifice a couple tomatoes, but in the long run, you're going to get more tomatoes. So you're going to sacrifice some earlier ones, but it's worth the sacrifice for disease prevention alone. The important part about consistent watering has anyone grown a tomato and then the bottom gets all rotten, like really brown and rotten? No, that's called blossom end rot. Okay. Blossom end rot, everyone you'll see on the internet say you just have to get some Epsom salt and put it in the soil because it needs calcium. It does need calcium, but the soil doesn't need calcium. We have plenty of calcium in our soil for the most part, everywhere. It's a matter of when there's overwater or underwater, calcium becomes unavailable for the plant. Plants only take nutrients up in certain molecular forms. If you change the chemistry in the soil by adding more water or not enough water, then that calcium gets bound up and doesn't have access to the plant. So the plant can't use it. So everyone will say it's because there's no calcium in there. So you can add calcium, but the most important thing to do is to have it nice and evenly consistent. So a drip system is really good for that. Or just every day I'm coming in, I'm watering very consistently the same amount. Get your fingers in the soil, feel what it feels like. If it's sopping wet, you're watering too much. If it just feels a little moist, but and you can squeeze the soil and it sticks together a little bit, but it's not real muddy, then it's good. And then the next thing, it's on the bottom, but so avoid overwatering and underwatering, nice and even through the entire season. Okay. That is going to be their best method to get to stop blossom end rot. Fertilizer needs. So all plants need what's called macronutrients and micronutrients. The macros, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Nitrogen is for the vegetative stage of the plant. That's when it's making leaf and stems and really vegetatively growing. Okay. That's when the plant is really using a lot of nitrogen. And then flowering and roots and fruit is more your phosphorus and potassium. So with tomatoes, you want to start with a real all-purpose kind of, I'm an organic farmer, so I use an organic fertilizer. Starting with a nice all-purpose organic fertilizer that has, NPK is on a fertilizer bag, it will have 3 numbers. N being nitrogen, the first one, P being your phosphorus, and K being your potassium. So in the beginning, most granular organic fertilizers are like, 3-2-2 or 3-1-1 or 5, maybe get 7-2-2 or 7-2-1. You want to have in the beginning a nice all-purpose one with as much nitrogen as you can get, like 7 would be good. But it's a high number. Something like blood meal is about 15% nitrogen. Feather meal is very high in nitrogen. So we want to get a good amount of nitrogen in the beginning, but then you want to cut it off. You don't want to continue fertilizing throughout your season with nitrogen. You will stop production of flowering, and you'll reduce your yields. The flavor will go down. That's the time when you want to start adding things like phosphorus and potassium fertilizers. Now, all organic fertilizers are slow release. There's a few like fish emulsion and stuff like that that's a little bit quicker, but phosphorus and potassium are pretty slow released. So you want to think ahead. Soil tests are great, of course, so you know what you have. Consistent waterings also will help nutrient uptake. So nitrogen in the beginning, then cut it off once you start getting a lot of flowers. No more nitrogen, no more additional nitrogen. So you can side dress with fertilizer. Side dressing means plant's growing. I just sprinkle a little fertilizer down on the ground underneath it. That's when you want to cut off the nitrogen. You want 0-2-2 or 0-3-3 or whatever the case may be. If you're a chemical farmer, you want to use, a gardener, use 0-10-10 or something like that. But you want to cut off the nitrogen once the plant's up and growing real well, and not right at the first few sets of flowers, but once it really starts to pump out flowers, and definitely by the time you're setting fruit, you want to cut off the nitrogen. Mulching is the next thing on here. I can't stress to the importance of mulching. The main reason you want to mulch is because that makes all the soil food web happy. Okay. Everyone think, oh, you're trying to conserve water and it helps whatever. Yes, it does that too. And it helps keep the weeds down. Really great thing. But what it's doing is giving a really good, comfortable home for the microbes to live. And I'm all about the microbes. So if you put some mulch down, it'll encourage the microbes to have a better environment. It'll keep that water consistent. It won't get too wet it will help kind of ease the watering schedule so it doesn't go through peaks and valleys. It's nice and slow. Nutrient uptake is nice and is even. And if you mulch enough, it'll help suppress the weeds. Okay. So mulching is compost and mulch are key. Bury the stems. These are 3 very important things, right? So get the mulch down. I don't put it down right away because I don't want to cool the soil down. So if there's mulch on the garden first, and I know my tomatoes or my peppers or eggplants are going there, things that really like a warm soil to get going, I'll pull the mulch off from the wintertime and let the sun do its work and get a little bit of warmth. And then I'll plant my plants and then I'll push the mulch back again. If it's really early in the season, I'll wait a month before I put the mulch back and keep it on there. But it doesn't take long before the mulch needs to get put on.
That black plastic early on to warm up the soil and then cut it out.
That works good. Yeah, the question was, how about using black plastic early to warm it up and then pulling it off later? Black plastic mulch is a good mulch. I don't use it anymore because I don't do that kind of farming anymore. But a lot of us I've had acres and acres of black plastic mulch going. We have machines built to lay it. It's a pretty incredible thing. And if you are going to use black mulch or any kind of like plastic mulch, get your drip tape or your irrigation underneath there before you seal it up, and then so you get the water in there. Weed mat, you know what weed mat is? Weed mat's another great like permanent mulch that a lot of people use, where you just cut a hole and you put your tomato plant in, and then put your dripper on or your tape underneath it. That typically you can leave on and leave it out for the whole season. You never want to leave your garden bare soil in the fall and through the winter. If you can see your soil, that's not good. Okay. The microbes are not happy when you're exposing them to freezing and thawing and the temperature spikes. Cover in the fall. If you can't get a cover crop down, which is the best thing to do, If you can't get a cover crop down, then at least make sure everything's heavily mulched before going into the winter. You never want to leave the ground bare, ever. It's not really a bad choice. You're leaching nutrients going down. The best thing to do is to grow a cover crop. That cover crop will pull the nutrients that are in the soil there and hold them until the spring when you till it back under or shovel it back under or with a digging fork. And then those nutrients can then get back into the system again and utilize for your crop that's going to follow it. So I don't have any information about cover cropping here, but that was my last talk. But cover cropping is really important. Okay, so this is the time when I was debating whether I was going to just show you lots of crazy pictures of all these tomato diseases and things that you have. And by the time I realized, I started loading them on the slides and realized that like your head's going to be spinning and you're really not going to be able to differentiate a late blight from an early blight from septoria very well. Okay. The best thing to do is to prevent these things from coming in the first place. So the key to disease management is prevention. Okay. So I'll run through this real quick. So the common pests that we have, aphids, thrips, flea beetle, tomato hornworm, fruit worm, white flies. Those are pretty much the main ones. Leaf hoppers, I didn't put on there. They can be a problem from time to time. None of these are really a big problem. Tomato hornworm. Has anyone ever seen the tomato hornworm? So it's a big, big worm with a horn-looking thing on it. Definitely Google it. You should see what it looks like. They can decimate your tomato plant overnight, like just Paul Bunyan style, like where did my tomato plant go kind of thing, like literally can just destroy one in one night. They're big, they're voracious eaters. The benefit is they're really easy to pick. And if you just once you start to see the damage, then go find them. They're camouflaged really well. So you really want to get in there and spend some time, but you'll find them because they're big. So, the moth, by the way, is a gorgeous, beautiful moth. It's like just spectacular moth. So I feed them to the chickens because why not? It's like, it's the chickens love it. They fight over them. So the hornworm can be really decimate and stuff. Aphids is probably your next biggest problem. Both of these pests are really easy to deal with organically speaking. Okay. There's a lot of products to deal with those guys. I didn't want to get into a bunch of products and what to use and stuff like that, but I mean, I can, if you have questions, I can certainly answer them. But I'm an organic gardener and farmer, so I'm using products that are what's called OMRI certified. It will have it on the bottle. It'll say OMRI, OMRI, Organic Review Material Review Institute. So if it's OMRI certified, then it's organic. Okay. So if you buy something and it doesn't say Omri on it, I would be suspect of whether to put that in your garden if you're an organic gardener. So look for Omri certified stuff. It'll say right on the label, thrips, aphids. Okay. Thrips, aphids typically are certain types, neem, pyrethrum. There's a whole slew of products that can be used to get rid of those guys. Excuse me. Soap. You've heard of people using Castile soap. You can get what's called insecticidal soap. Those really do a great job. They basically coat the insect and they can't breathe through the spiracles. So flea beetles are very tough. The main problem with flea beetle is in the spring when you first has anyone put a transplanted tomato and there's lots of little like BB looking holes in the leaf? Ever seen that? Wow. Well, you're doing good then. Flea beetle in the spring, when you first put your plants out, will put little pepper holes in there. And it's not necessarily going to kill the plant, but it really slows it down, weakens it. The way we deal with flea beetles is we cover the crop with something called remay, floating row cover. So we put the crops out there, whatever it is, and we cover it. So it's a polyester spun fabric that lets air and light and water through. It's called floating row covers. And on some crops, it can just float right on top. spinach, kale, things like just sit there and the kale will grow right above the thing. But with tomatoes, which has it grows from the growing tip, the apical meristem, if that hits the floating row cover, it can slow production down and really like almost halt production in some spots. Bless you. So we put little hoops, little metal hoops, and then we like little mini greenhouses. And if you go in the back of any good garden catalog, you'll see them selling you the hoops and the floating row covers. But the key thing too is to get them in there and then we cover it quickly. And then that will slow down the flea beetle a lot. You get a lot of flea beetles on your brassicas, your arugula. They seem to really love arugula. Your kales, your broccolis, a lot of the brassica family. So getting that remake covered over there right after planting. I mean, like right plant and cover. So when it comes to worms, like tomato hornworm, we use a product called Bacillus thuringiensis, BT, is what its nickname is. You'll see they'll be like, worm killer or whatever they're going to call it. BT is a bacteria, naturally occurring bacteria that in concentration kills Lepidoptera, which is worms, caterpillars. Okay. So a couple sprays of that. The commercial one that I use is called something called Dipel. You can buy Dipel typically. I don't know if you can get it like Bayberry, but I'll give you another one of my tips. Everything you ever need to grow anything in your garden is at a place called Progressive Growers in Wareham. Okay. So everyone goes off Cape a little bit. It's not that far away. We can go over the Cape. Like it's like half the price. Potting soil, pots, containers, pesticide, fertilizers, everything you need to grow, everything is there. If you have a greenhouse, they've got all the greenhouse supplies, irrigation for drip irrigation, tools, it's much, much, much cheaper. And since you're home gardeners and you don't need a pesticide license to buy these things, organic pesticides, you could just go in there and buy it right off the shelf and use what the professionals use a lot cheaper. I mean, a lot cheaper. And the key to pest and disease management is prevention. It's all about prevention. Part of the prevention is knowing, okay, I'm going to get aphids and I'm going to get some worms. So have those pesticides ready to go. Don't wait until you have the problem, and then start spraying because by then you might have more numbers, whatever. Have your tools in your toolbox ready to go. Okay. Neem is a very popular organic pesticide. It has some drawbacks. It's kind of a broad spectrum killer, so it can kill some good things. If you are a cannabis grower, you definitely don't want to use it. If you do not want to smoke neem, so I want to put that out there right now. I don't know if you guys are into that, but you definitely don't want to have neem anywhere utilizing in the cannabis plant. But there are plenty of products for every pest that you're going to get on tomato. We can go to Bayberry when they open, and they're going to have a tomato spray. It's going to say right there. It's from Biodyne, the company, and it's going to say tomato spray, and it's going to have some pesticides in it for some pests, and it's going to have some disease prevention stuff in there for disease. So disease. Yep.
I had a person ask what kind of cover crops you would recommend.
So, I'm assuming they're talking about a winter cover crop, right? Yeah. So our typical in New England, our typical traditional cover crop, winter cover crop is winter rye and hairy vetch.
What was the last one?
Hairy vetch. Hairy vetch is a leguminous plant. It's nitrogen fixing. It has special rhizobia bacteria that live on the root system. All legumes have this, right? Peas, beans, alfalfa, all sorts of legumes. So rhizobia are special bacteria that live in the roots and colonize and make nodules on the roots. They can take atmospheric nitrogen, which I think we're at 77% of our air is nitrogen, and plants need it. It's like the number one thing plants need to grow, but the plants can't get it from the atmosphere. It's got to go through the nitrogen cycle. The fastest thing for the nitrogen cycle is rhizobia bacteria. So what that does is the hairy vetch will actually pull nitrogen up into the leaf. And by the way, nitrogen equals protein. It's synonymous. Okay. So, you know, excuse me. Um, we want free nitrogen. We want free protein, right? That's like important in life. So the more those are called green manure cover crops because it acts like a manure. Like, Sir Albert Howard who basically coined organic farming in the 1920s saw the same. You could put manure on a field and get this kind of growth, or you can put these special leguminous plants and get the same thing, right? So their nickname is green manures. So by using a winter rye, which is hardy, you can plant that pretty late, and then some kind of leguminous plant, green manure. You're getting free nitrogen for that crop next time. So when that crop comes in and you turn under the hairy vetch, that's going to feed that crop the nitrogen it needs, and you can cut off your nitrogen fertilizer eventually if your soil food web is really cranking. You can eventually get to the point where you don't have to actually, if your soil food's really cranking, you get to the point where you don't have to fertilize it ever again, So, and when we're doing green manure crops, the crop that follows in a crop rotation, we do the green manure, a heavy feeder comes in. Then the next year you have a medium feeder in that same location. Then the next year you have a light feeder, and then the next year you have a green manure cover crop again, and then it cycles. So that's a quick little rotation scheme that you can try to design in your home gardens. Cover crop, green manure cover crop, heavy feeder, medium feeder, light feeder, back to cover have a green manure again, and just that's a 4-year cycle, I think, 5-year cycle. So uh
Someone's asking for an example of green and heavy, like green heavy. I'm not exactly sure.
yeah, can you be a little more specific on that last green heavy question?
Just specifically cover crops.
Oh, I mean, I meant heavy feeder. So a green manure, a green manure is a leguminous plant. So clover, vetch, there's a few others, you want to have a green manure crop, cover crop, and then a heavy feeding plant like a broccoli, something along those lines that typically needs a lot of food to eat to fertilize it. So that's what I mean. Green manure cover crop, and then a heavy feeder would be the crop that follows that would be the heavy feeder. And then lighter feeding as the years go on until you get to the year five, yeah, and then you're back to the green manure cover crop. In farming, we used to call it like a fallow. We'd leave a part of our field fallow, and that fallow would be dedicated to soil building, and we'd build soil that whole section. In your garden, it might just be a little 5 by 5 space that you're rotating around, but you're going to have a fallow year where you're just building soil. That's the important part is, to grow soil. So, okay. So, and by the way, healthy soil produces a healthy plant, which then can prevent diseases and pests. So the pests don't, like an aphid's gonna go to a weak plant. It's not gonna, like, if the plant is strong and hardy, it's gonna be able to fend off pretty much aphids and thrips and a lot of those things. It's when the plant is weak and it's stressed, overwatered, underwatered, not fertilized, um, in the shade. These kind of things will stress a plant out. And then those will be the first plants that get it. Okay, so starting with a healthy soil will produce a healthy plant, which ultimately will produce a healthy human. Okay, or Cliff, the dog. Um, Go ahead.
You have a small plot,
Mm-hmm.
like a 10 by 10.
Yep.
You recommend just covering it for the winter,
I recommend getting a cover crop on there.
cover crop.
Yeah, a
And then you
plant.
just in the spring turn it over.
Exactly. Yep.
How much in?
Can you repeat that?
About inches. So the question is if you have a small, say 10 by 10 plot, and you're going to put a cover crop down, you want to, you'll grow a cover crop on there. If it's late in the season, you can still put winter rye on there. Yeah. And then, so the point is to, what happens is whatever nutrients are there that are left over from your fertilizer or whatever, that winter rye is going to pull that up into the leaf, and it's going to stay there on that leaf until the spring when you turn it under, typically about 8 inches, sometimes 10 to 12. Hairy vet, I mean, winter rye can be a little tough. Like it, then it's like a grass, so you can sometimes end up having to weed the grass. But hopefully, you're going to be mulching a lot, and that's going to help keep it down too.
Yeah.
So, if you can't get a cover crop down or don't want to, at least get the mulch on there because that's going to slow
Okay.
that's going to slow how much leaching is happening to the soil. Okay,
But not like a fabric.
a fabric is better than nothing.
Yeah.
But something
Well,
organic,
mulch is
something that's once living is
Yeah.
better. I mean, and we're blessed here.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just go right out, over on the beach and go get some seaweed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, we're blessed on Cape Cod. We have salt marsh hay
Yeah.
and seaweed. And, salt marsh hay has no terrestrial weed seeds. Where if you go buy some straw and use straw as your mulch, you're going to get all the Timothy hay, straw weeds, and all the weeds that are in that straw are going to be now in your garden. So you're bringing in weed seeds. So, but salt marsh hay has no terrestrial weed seeds in it. So nothing's going to come out of that. And don't worry about the salt. It's actually good for the soil, believe it or not. I'm a Korean natural farmer. I practice Korean natural farming for the last, this is 6 years now. We make an input called fermented seawater. So we're actually like applying seawater to our fields now. Like pretty much every mineral, or maybe every mineral known to the planet is in seawater. And plants need minerals, not just plants, but the microbes need the minerals. So we're adding this fermented seawater to encourage microbial growth in the soil. And
So you gather seawater and just let it percolate in the sun, or?
it sits outside. Yep, it doesn't percolate. You don't have to percolate it. That's more like a compost tea that you would be brewing. But then we add something in Korean natural farming. We add something called Oriental herbal nutrient. So there's a lot of it's OHN we call it. But yeah, you can Google Korean natural farming, and my teacher's name is Chris Trump, and then you'll be go down his rabbit hole and you'll find out all about it. And I can also give you a little plug now. I suppose it's a good time, but I am a soil Chris. I've gone through Chris Trump's training programs. I'm now a certified soil smith under his program, so I'm now allowed to teach Korean natural farming advanced levels anywhere I'd like in the world. So Master Cho, who just recently passed, he's the creator of Korean natural farming. Master Cho, first time he made it to an English-speaking country was Hawaii. Chris Trump's a macadamia farmer with his family, got involved, got turned on. Chris is one of the premier Korean natural farming teachers on the planet. So he was my teacher. So I'm direct lineage from Master Cho to what I've learned through Chris. And he's got you can just Google him and you'll see there's millions of Korean natural farming Chris Trump, and it's a deep, deep, deep rabbit hole, but very cool one. We no longer buy fertilizer. We no longer buy pesticides. We make everything ourselves from what's on the farm, and everything we make, we can ingest and put in the human body. And actually, a lot of it's beneficial for the human body. So Oriental herbal nutrient is like ginger and garlic and feel, so it's a good rabbit hole. We don't know the time yet. It's probably going to be June or July. We're going to do an introductory. Actually, we're pretty blessed on Cape Cod. There's 3 soil smiths, 1 in Brewster and 2 of us in Truro. So we're going to teach an introduction class, most likely at the Truro Library. But then we're going to be doing a hands-on work at my farm and an event space that we built where you'll learn to make these inputs yourself. Okay, so stay tuned. Truro Library, maybe the Provincetown Library. Maybe we'll do it a joint thing. Maybe that would be good for all of us. Get the word out. Go ahead.
I use seed weed every year, but I've always washed it out. So if you use seed weed every year, you can just put it.
You don't need
everything.
You don't need to wash it anymore. Yeah,
Excellent.
I mean for years. So the question was, this gentleman here uses seaweed every year, but he was rinsing it. And I believe you don't need to rinse it any longer. I have an anecdotal story. For many years, when I first started farming in Truro with my dear friend Arthur, we would collect salt marsh hay and we would lay it out in the driveway, and we would put the sprinklers on, and we would rinse it all off. And it was a very laborious job. It was like you got to take it off the beach, and then you got to haul it to the farm, and you got to lay it back out, and then you got to put it on the field. So one year I was like, forget it, I'm not doing this anymore. And it went straight from the marsh right to the garden, right on the plants. Nothing ever changed. So 5 years of rinsing and 33 years of not rinsing, nothing. Now, some of the eelgrasses and stuff like that, I haven't done any kind of like real side by side kind of trials, but pretty sure you're going to be good.
Can you, where can you find salt marsh hay?
In the marsh,
Yeah, but which marsh are public?
I'm not really at liberty to say. There's like, it's you might, you gotta talk to some old timers that are willing to give up their secrets, but let's just say in Churro, for instance, there's many little marshes that come in, and there's many roads that drive along. Let's just say Castle Road, right? Drives along, and there's a lot of there's a harbor that washes up a lot too, so
Which harbor?
there's only one in Churro.
Oh, okay.
But be forewarned, there's people have their stake their claims, a lot of us have got our spots, and my spot's actually in Wellfleet, so I don't, I bring it back to Churro, but yeah, it's all in the marsh. And you know what salt marsh is?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's like that reed grass. It's kind of about the size of your pinky. Looks strawish, washes up. Yeah, it's been gathered and collected for the history of Churro and Eastham and Wellfleet. So at the king tide, the first full moon in March and the big king tides, the next rain after that, the whole town of Churro would stop. The sail maker, the salt people, the boat builders down in the Panama, everyone would stop. A lot of the school kids would stop going to school. They built special boats, these very shallow drafted rowboats, wide boats. I think in Eastham there might be one at the National Seashore. They used to have one to show. And then you'll see some photos if you go to the Churro Historical Site where they got mounds of the salt marsh on these little boats. And then I don't know if anyone lived here a long time. I know you lived here a long time. But in the marshes, they used to have these big racks, wooden racks, right? Not the little blue boxes for the flies, but big wooden racks, right? So they would sail those boats up into those racks and load it in there. And then for the rest of the year, all the farmers in Churro and Wellfleet and Eastham and everywhere would go up to those racks with their horse and carriage and get the salt marsh, and they use it for fodder for their animals. So there's a long history of using salt marsh hay on farms in our area. Currently, there's a big debate, like we're disturbing the environment and the little critters, and then you're trampling on the high water mark where some person owns the land, and then whatever the case may be, there's a lot of argument, and there's a lot of people saying it's not sustainable and you shouldn't be doing it, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm an environmentalist, like very much so, but I'm going to continue collecting salt marsh hay. It's like a traditional thing for farmers. I'm going to keep doing it. I've never seen anything, witness like we're not taking the salt. The marshes are dying. Has nothing to do with us taking the salt marsh hay. That has something else to do with some other problem. But, be wary, because if you're near someone's property and they come marching down and they're like, don't touch that and just be prepared that if you're on private property that you might get a little yelled at, So that's just forewarning for the mulch people. Okay, let's get into disease prevention. We talked about blossom end rot. Okay, consistent watering. That's easily to take care of that problem. You don't need Epsom salt. You don't need CalMag. You don't need anything like that. You don't need eggshells. You don't need Tums. These are all the things you're going to read about. Okay, you just need consistent watering. Okay, that takes care of blossom end rot. Septoria, everyone says it will be like a blight. Septoria starts at the bottom of the plant, yellow leaves, brown spots. Brown spots come first, then the yellow leaves, and it kind of just marches up your plant, okay? I'm sure if you've grown tomatoes, you've seen that, okay? The first year or two you get tomatoes, you grow tomatoes, you get what's called the gimme years. You don't have a lot of pests, you don't have a lot of diseases. So like everything's growing great, but that's not going to last forever. That's actually about year 3, it's going to be gone. So once again, open up the bottom of that plant so that those leaves aren't touching touching the soil. Septoria, some of the blights are all related to our soil-borne organisms. So you really need to get that. I mean, Septoria can become airborne as well once it takes on the plant and sporulates, and that can blow in the air, but it starts from the soil. So nice space between the ground and the first set of leaves and branches. You want to have good airflow. Spacing. Airflow is key here, guys. Really key. So space things out, prune out the suckers, try to get some airflow within the canopy, but also around the plant. Okay. Um, the next thing is to keep the leaves dry. Overhead watering of tomato plants, or any plant for that matter, is just not a good idea. Really, it's convenient to just turn the sprinkler on, and yes, if that's all you can do, then you got to do that. But it's best to have drip irrigation. There's many types of drip irrigation. It's better just take a wand and water, below the plants and just get the soil wet. Do your best to keep the plant dry. Definitely no watering after 3 p.m. You've got to have a cutoff. Okay. No watering. You want the plants to go into the night dry. Okay. We get some humid, cool nights, cool down with humidity, all sorts of, I mean, you're just asking for bacteria wilts, angular spots, all these diseases that you guys have. And, like I said, I was going to show you all sorts of pictures, but for those of you, so they can see the slides, Courtney, on Zoom. Yeah. So on the bottom of there, you'll see a website. Okay. Go to that website. It's through Johnny's Seeds. I'm going to show you the Johnny Selected Seeds catalog. Go onto their website and just type in the search bar tomato diseases, and you're going to get this incredible sheet that will have pests and diseases of them with all the photos, all the scary photos you never want to look at. Okay. The key to, what you're going to use to prevent it is you need to know what it is. And that we also have the Cooperative Extension Service in every county in America. So you can send an example of a leaf to the Cooperative Extensions. We also have the Master Gardeners programs, which is part of Cooperative Extensions. They can actually come out to your house and garden and look. You can take it to a good nursery that has a skilled staff. There's some great people at Agway in Orleans that can help you identify diseases. Pests are easy to ID. Diseases are much harder. But the good news is for organic people, it's about prevention. Okay. And like the treatment for septoria and late blight and canker and this are all basically the same product. Okay. So I'm going to give you a couple product names. So the key about prevention, when you're looking down, you're walking your garden and you're going, oh, that's like the greenest, best looking tomato I've ever seen. Right when you think that, how beautiful the tomato is, that's when you want to start spraying for diseases. Okay. You need to be preventatively spraying for diseases if you have a disease problem. If you had a disease problem the year before, hopefully you're rotating, you're not growing your plants in the same location, so you're moving them around. But if you've had septoria, which you probably have had, you're going to have it again. So you want to spray for it preventatively because you can't see those little spores yet in the beginning. You were looking at these beautiful green plants and you're like, oh my God, my tomato plants are great this year. And then 3 weeks from there, it starts to yellow up and yellow goes all the way up to the top of the plant. So preventatively spraying, okay? There's a lot of organic fungicides available for you. Once again, OMRI certified. It should say OMRI on the label, then you're good to go, okay? The key to disease prevention, if you're going to use an organic fungicide, is to mix the mode of actions. That means that different types. So a traditional or New England disease prevention on organic farms is sulfur spray once, and then a copper spray after that, then back to sulfur, then back to copper. But now we got a lot of other choices. That was like back in the day when that's all we had. So still using sulfur is my go-to a little bit. I'll use some sulfur. I don't use copper anymore. Actually, I don't use any of it anymore because I'm a Korean natural farmer, but if I was still doing it the way I used to, I would use sulfur. But there's a product called Regalia, okay? And Regalia is actually Japanese knotweed, which is our invasive weed. It's an extract from the Japanese knotweed, okay? So you can use it as a spray, but you also want to use it as a soil drench and add it to the soil so the plant uptakes it into its system, and it's a preventative from the inside out. So that's not a systemic fungicide because that's what a chemical fungicide would be called systemic, but it gets inside and helps give you resistance from the inside of the plant. Okay. It's called Regalia. You're not going to get it at Agway. You're not going to get it at Bayberry. You're going to get it at Progressive Growers in Wareham. That's where you're going to get it. Okay. Go ahead. Question?
I've had the blight before, and, should you use a fungicide? If I had blight last year, for instance, should I use a fungicide before planting, or, because normally I just add like,
Aside from like the Regalia, which is, there's no point of doing it. There's nothing organic that you can add to the soil that's going to get rid of the blight. It's only on the leaf surface. And that's, but what I'm trying, the question, if you haven't heard, is should I be adding a fungicide before a pre-plant? There are no organic fungicides that are pre-plant ready like that.
oh,
So it's all for foliar applications.
so once you see the yellow.
No, that's my point.
Yeah.
When you see a beautiful green tomato plant and you're like, yeah, I got the best looking tomato plant. It's nice and green. That's when you spray. Okay, you've got to be preventative. You have to like nip this in the bud because it's coming your way and you're not going to see it for many weeks until it's too late. If it's already starting to be yellow leaves and little brown spots, you've already got it. And now you're like you're chasing the tail and trying to put a Band-Aid on something. You've got to preventatively spray if you have a problem with late blight, early blight, septoria, all the other ugly pictures that you can get on that website.
Old foliage, you spray the,
I don't spray the soil. I don't bother with that.
just the bulb.
But key, I get the underside first.
Oh.
Spray up. Okay. Spray up. Okay. And then spray on the top too. Okay. Now if you're going to spray copper, okay, and there's fruit on the vine, you're going to want to wipe it's blue. So you're spraying, copper on there and everything turns blue. So if you have fruit there, you're going to want to wipe that off right away. You want to, wipe off that fruit away because that actually can burn and scald and cause blemishes on your fruit. Okay. So the traditional methods of sulfur, then copper, then sulfur, then copper. But now I don't really use copper anymore. I don't use any of it, like I said, but sulfur, Regalia are key. And then the next thing is really important for preventative disease is to get silica into your soil. Okay. Silica is an important mineral for plants. It's not a micronutrient. It's not even, but it's really important because what it does is it helps build the cell wall in the plant. Okay. So it helps build a thick, strong cell wall that the hyphae from powdery mildew or late blight, when it tries to penetrate into the leaf epidermis and get into the cell wall, it's too strong to penetrate. So how do you get silica? That's the hard part. There's something called potassium silicate you can get. It's organic. Once again, you're going to go to Progressive Grower around here to get that. You can make your own silica things like we do in Korean natural farming. We make something called fermented plant juice. We're using horsetail, a plant that's high in silica. Oats are high in silica. Okay. But another thing to use, I don't know if anyone's heard of biodynamic farming, but it's really another rabbit hole you should probably go down. But there's certain preparations of biodynamic preparations, and one of them is a horsetail preparation. It's going to come in a little powder. Don't quote me. I think it's number 508. Don't quote me. Could be 501, but I think it's 508. Biodynamic preparation 508 horsetail. Okay. mix it up with the water, follow all the directions, and spray that on your plants. Okay, that'll help build the cell walls and prevent the hypha from the fungus and other bacterial stuff from getting in there.
You
Re-
do that also when it's green?
Yes, I do that. I do that throughout the entire season of every
Oh, okay.
every plant on my farm. I started off doing a lot of biodynamic stuff, but now I do Korean natural farming input. I do a fermented plant juice with horsetail. But that's a different process, and it's easy, but our biggest problem is like finding the horsetail. Like we don't like if we were in Western Mass, or I went to college in Humboldt County, Northern California. I mean, it was like, it was everywhere, it was like a weed. So that's the beautiful thing about Korean natural farming is we're actually using weeds to make inputs to make our plants grow better. So it's a pretty cool thing. But you're going to have a hard time getting silica like just around locally. So I would go ahead and Google biodynamic horsetail preparation. I think it's 508, but I can't remember exactly.
Isn't there silica in the sand?
There is, yeah. But you need all that soil food web has to be really cranking up, and you'll get silica from the sand, but you do need, you want more. You know what I mean? You want more. You want to really build it up in the plant.
Another thing I use in my garden, I take when I eat garlic, I save all the skins
Mhm.
and I just throw them on every plant that I think is a deterrent against insects.
Yeah, a lot of people, that's been an old trick for a while. A lot of people do that. They'll even grind the garlic into water and spray it. Great for aphids, things like that. Using garlic peels and stems, whatnot. But the thing that I like best about you throwing it in there is that's organic matter you're adding to your soil. Like if it was once living, you're throwing it on there, that makes me happy. Like whether it gets rid of the bugs or not, I know that the soil's gonna like it.
And I do that with coffee grounds,
Mm-hmm.
banana skin. Well, I have a composter, a rotating one, and I keep a big thing underneath it for the drips. And then whatever water drips into that, I take that water, wherever.
Compost tea. Yeah. So once again, compost, mulch, bury the stem, airflow, prevent diseases. Courtney, you have a question?
So we can use the silica instead of the sulfur or copper?
Silica's I would do is in conjunction. Yeah, if you've grown tomatoes last year and you had a blight or a septoria or something, then you need more than just silica. Okay, you really need to start silica right away in the beginning of its growth. I would spray it every couple weeks of the plant with silica. You really want to push the silica. Okay, it's going to help in the long run, big time, but it's not going to be it's not going to be the end all be all type situation. You're going to want to have some other stuff around. Now there's baking soda people use for some things. There's hydrogen peroxide. There are a lot of organic fungicides you can use. Okay. But what's another I'm trying to think of the other one. Oh, it's commercially available. It's a fungus. Kind of want to think of like there's certain products there's more like biological warfare going on. Like you're going to put in the good funguses on your soil in your plants to combat the bad ones. I'm just drawing a blank on this one, but it's a commercially available product. Just look for organic fungicides. Read the label, it will say what it's for. Your main things you're working with is powdery mildew, late blight, early blight, septoria, canker, bacteria wilt. These are like an alternaria. These are like your main 7 things. So I could show you 7 nasty pictures, but it's all going to not mean much to you. What matters to you is what's in your garden at the time. Getting a proper ID of what you're getting so you know what's there. But organically speaking, the same fungicides are treated for almost all of those things, right? Botrytis cinerea is another one that we can get to. So mixing up the things, some regalia, a little sulfur, some silica, maybe, mixing it up a little bit, coming back. few weeks later and hitting it back again with some more regalia. Do regalia soil drench, do regalia on the leaf. There's something called if you got a real big problem, there's something called oxyphos and xeritol, which are basically like hydrogen peroxide type products. All OMRI certified, so it's organic. And that just really is a good kind of a quick kill down.
Mycorrhizal fungi to your soil?
I do, but I don't buy it in the jug, what we call bugs in a jug. The question is do I add mycorrhiza mycorrhizal fungi into my soil? And I do. That's the basis of Korean natural farming. The foundation of Korean natural farming is something called indigenous microorganisms. So we're actually going out into the forest, collecting microbes that are within 10 miles of our farm, getting indigenous microorganisms that grow in our climate. And you'd think it would just be like temperature and moisture and pH, but barometric pressure has an awful lot to do with these microbes. So when you buy bugs in a jug, or if you buy potting soil that's got mycorrhiza in it, when we put it under the microscope, most of the time it's dead. We don't see a lot of living stuff that's like sporulating and making more of itself. They're not shipped with the right amount of food to keep them fed. So we go out and capture our own and then bring it onto our farm. And that's called indigenous microorganism. And then we make something, so we call it IMO. Okay. So IMO, we go out and collect, then we make IMO 2, IMO 3, IMO 4, IMO 5, and then we make liquid IMO, which we spray on our plants as a preventative for diseases. Okay. So that's that biological warfare. And mycorrhiza is in there as well as other microbes, all the microbes and diatoms and protozoas and everything. So basically, I'll give you a real quick thing. We're making some al dente rice. We put it in a box with some holes in it, fill it up about 2/3, cover it so the predators can't, like mice can't get in it with a little screen, and some cover it with a little paper towel on top. Go into the forest. You know, when you move the duff and leaf duff around a tree, and you've seen those white threads? That's your fungus, right? That's your fungi. So you find that stuff, you kind of push it aside, you settle that little box in there, nestle it in, protect it from the rain. Okay, all those organisms that are in the soil right there are going to go up and it's going to turn like tempeh. Everyone knows what tempeh looks like. By the time you're done, it's going to look like tempeh. Now, sometimes it's going to be pink and orange and green, all these colors. You're looking for a nice white fuzz tempeh, but it's al dente rice. It's not overcooked. It's like if you went to a dinner party and you made or someone made the rice and you'd be like, geez, who they don't know how to make rice. So it's just a little crunchy because then there's more food source, carbohydrate source for all those bacteria and all the fungi. So you're getting indigenous stuff and bringing it to your soil and then inoculating your soil. And all of our soils are out of balance everywhere. The only place that's not out of balance is in the forest. So finding the biggest, oldest tree, different types of trees. I go to the Cedar Swamp Trail and make collections. I go to the dunes and get collections. Behind my farm, I get collections. I get collections in Harwich. I get collections at Nickerson State Park. And then we mix them all together. So I got a lot of diversity, right? But you can buy bugs in a jug, but a lot of times it's not worth the money. And you can also buy something called EM. You ever heard of EM? Effective microorganisms. And you can buy that too. It's not going to hurt anything, but it's probably not really worth the money you're spending. And some of that stuff's pretty expensive.
I get the soil every year from the forest. Does that have enough microorganisms in it?
It sure does.
Not as good as getting the stuff around.
No, it's as good.
Oh, it is.
It's the same
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, it's the beauty of the rice traps is that we're not disturbing the earth. They're not digging up the forest and then taking it out of the forest. So then what you're potentially could be doing over time is getting an imbalance in the forest where it's normally balanced. And then you're trying to get your garden in balance. So it's better to just put a rice box in there, get the organisms, and then take it out, and everything else is still there intact.
Oh, okay.
But
I used to do, a spade hole here.
Yeah, yeah.
There, and,
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to do the good job. Adding that to your compost too is a good thing. Good starter. It's called leaf duff. Get that duff into there. That's a good way of inoculating your soil. really important. Go ahead.
Price thing, how long do you leave it there before you bring it back?
You're gonna have to come to that class. You're gonna have to come to my Karina. Yeah, this is or go to Chris Trump's website and his YouTube channels and like look into it. This is a huge rabbit hole, and it's all weather dependent, temperature, moisture. I mean, there's a whole lot to it. It's easy, but there's a lot to it, and you're gonna fail. You have to fail at Korean natural farming to get it to where you know what's going on. You like, and most things in life, you learn the most when you fail, right? So you need to. This is a practice that Master Cho created. That's a real process, and part of the process is you learning through your mistakes. So I encourage you, if you're interested in something like this, to stay tuned. June or July, we're going to have a talk. I'm going to do the introduction to Korean natural farming, but then we're going to come to my farm and we're going to make these things. Okay, hands on. We're going to make them. So. It's a big rabbit hole. I definitely suggest going to Chris Trump's website and his watching his YouTube channel, and you'll start with the foundation of Korean natural farming. He'll talk about why we do the things we do, and then you can look how to make an IMO, and he'll show you how to make the whole thing. It's all right there. Good old YouTube University. So, but I don't mean to I not give you the right answer, but it is a process, and it would take hours for us to get into it. So disease prevention, your verticillium wilts, your bacteria, your cankers, your septoria, all are basically going to be taking care of the same general fungicides, organic fungicides. And airflow is key. Keeping the leaves dry is key. All these little things add up to a successful tomato plant. Okay. You can, if you start getting it and it's starting to climb up, you can pull off diseased leaves. You got to not put that in your compost. You want to burn it and get it away, get it out of there, take it to the dump, whatever you're going to do. You're going to want to have some alcohol on your hands and tools and spray everything down. Sometimes if you're going to go and start removing yellow leaves, I will go ahead and spray it with alcohol first. And so if there's any sporulation, like you can't see the spores but you touch the leaf and then poof, and there's spores everywhere. So spray it down with alcohol, then pull it off, and it won't spread as much. Okay, rarely keep your clean clothes. I mean, think about all the ways you don't get the flu is the same way you want to think about passing on diseases on your tomato plant. Okay, airflow, consistent watering, dry leaves, silica. These are the main things. Regalia is really a very cool product, the Japanese knotweed extract. So, an identification. I didn't want to bring in all the pictures because it's just you're not going to get much out of it. Find out what you have. There's great little apps now. There's all these cool AI things. You can take a picture of that and it'll be like, that's tomato late blight. Like just click it on it and bingo, it's there. Get it to cooperative extensions in every county, master gardeners. Bring it to me at the farmer's market. I'll tell you what you got. Find someone that knows what they're talking about at a nursery. I do know there's a few people at Agway in Orleans that are really quite knowledgeable. I don't know, you got to find those people, but proper ID is important. But generally speaking, most of the organic fungicides you're going to be using the same thing. Neem is a really good fungicide too, so you can get some insect control and some disease prevention. So if you're online and you're Zooming, that bottom website, Johnny Selected Seeds, is a phenomenal catalog. I'm sure I brought one. Yeah, I didn't.
What's that called again?
Johnny Selected Seeds. That right there, everybody. If you don't know this company, you should. Johnny Selected Seeds, phenomenal seed company in Maine. In the back is there's all these tools and remay and all this stuff. And I bet you if we go through here, we could probably find some organic sprays somewhere in here. Maybe not. They used to. They're in here somewhere. I don't know where it is, but There's our Remay. Here's the floating row covers. What I was talking about. It's like the white fabric. See that? White fabric. But the nice thing about Johnny's is their website is so thorough. There's huge amounts of information on their website. Go to like the resources section, growers resources, and it's like all the information you need is there for every kind of plant you want to grow. Flowers, herbs, how to grow in greenhouses, how to build greenhouses. I mean, just incredible amount of information on their website. The other, I think I have one. Oh, here's my other company, Fedco. Okay, Fedco, another great catalog. A lot of open pollinated heirlooms in here. Fedco and Johnny's Selected Seeds are in Maine. They have trial gardens. Utilizing a seed company catalog that has trial gardens is really important. Another one that has good trial gardens that I use, Baker's Creek. Okay, Baker's Creek. Okay, a little more expensive. They don't sell like big bulk like for the farmers like the other catalogs do. So, but really cool, all heirlooms in here for the most part. Really great squashes and peppers and chilies from all around the world. But one I should tell you, and I probably should have put it on this thing, is Gary Isbin is a gentleman, lives in, I don't know if he lives in Carmel. There's the largest tomato festival in the country is in Carmel, California every year. There's a website called tomatofest.com, I think it is. I don't think it's .org.com. I get a lot of my tomato seeds from him. I get a lot of them from him. There's a lot of an incredible amount of selection, very well researched, knows where they all come from, all over the world. They're open pollinated, so you can save the seeds yourself. I was a trial gardener for him. He would send me seeds to see how they grow in Cape Cod and in New England. So then he can advertise that grows well in New England kind of thing in the catalog. So Tomato Fest, I think it's .org. Is it .org or com?
Tomatofest.com.
Yeah. Incredible amount of tomato. I mean, just phenomenal. But these catalogs that those three also have millions of tomatoes. So, try new things. Try that green tomato, not the unripe green tomato that, is legendary fried green tomato, but the green tomato that when it's ripe, it's just so flavorful. Evergreen is one that I like to grow. If you can get your hands on a plant called Kellogg's Breakfast, an amazing, sweet, yummy, orangey colored. There's so many amazing tomatoes out there. Get away from the big boy and the early girl. All those hybrids are just passé, and they've got good skin and they got some disease resistant, but they're really lacking in flavor. Another, Paul Robeson, was he a opera singer, Paul Robeson? Politician? What was Paul Robeson? It was something. An actor, is that what he was? Paul Robeson, an amazing dark purple, brownish tomato, slight hints of smoky flavors to it. Carbon is like, man, Jetstar is the hybrid that I grow, that just dependable. But Carbon for the market gardener is just amazing. I think it comes from France. It's just a phenomenal plant.
I have a question.
Yes.
Occasionally, like when I order my seeds,
Mhm.
I get just a collection, and it will give the tomatoes that are called like tomato paste.
Mhm.
Does that mean that they're not flavorful?
Nope,
as-
they're flavorful, but they're more meaty. They've got less seeds and more meat, and it's usually a plum tomato.
Okay.
My plum tomato is Amish paste. Is the heirloom that I love the most. Amish paste is great. And then not the hybrid versions of San Marzano, but the heirloom varieties of San Marzano plums from Italy. Those are actually I don't even grow much Amish paste anymore. I just pretty much grow the San Marzanos. And that I get from Gary Isbin, right? Not all San Marzanos they created equal, and it takes time to figure out. Not all Prudence Purple is created equal. Not all Brandywine is created equal. So you got to find the genetic strain, the heirloom line that you like and that does well for you. There's an persimmon tomato, you guys. It's unbelievable.
Flavor wise.
Flavor wise, it's just gonna blow you away. Pineapple, it's another one. Just pineapple is a beautiful multicolored. So you slice into it, and it's like yellow and orange and red, and it makes like a mosaic pattern in there when you slice it and put it on your sandwich. It's really delicious. Um, Black Krim is a good one. You know, I'm thinking of those more salad type size, smaller size, Black Krim. Um, I'm a huge fan of green zebra, always have been. Green zebra is a green tomato with some stripes down the side. Yep, I could see that question too.
Storage.
Yeah.
6 months on the vine. And they have Italian sounding names. Do you have any information on that?
So those are typically those are more of the salad type ones, not the bigger ones. They're more smaller ones, and they have a little bit thicker skin, right? So it can handle a little bit more pressure from the environment and hold well. And it's typically a determinate plant, not an indeterminate plant. That's the information that I know about them. The hype, they've never lived up to the hype. You know, they're advertised as this way, but I've never once seen it to where it really holds it that long. Question?
Well, actually, that's my question is, I bought a cherry tomato plant, but it wasn't a cherry tomato plant. It was more like a plum size, but, it lasted to, December. Nothing of flavorful
Mhm.
tomato, but it did last until about December. Do you know any type of plant that it was?
Well, there's a lot that would do that,
Oh,
and they're
okay.
typically more the salad type. Was it on a big cluster? Was it like have a whole bunch of them on a cluster like a
Yeah.
cherry tomato? Yeah, so those cluster tomatoes are typically can hold on the vine for quite a while. Some are going to be better than others. But because of our climate changing, we're able to actually grow to, I mean, we're still picking sun golds through November, right? Like they're still fruiting and ripening all the way into November now, which never happened in the past, you know.
Well, I'm talking about they were already picked. I picked them in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I picked
So
them in August and they lasted.
yeah, so chances are it was most likely a hybrid,
Okay,
okay, because they're typically have stronger skins. They're meant to hold a long time, and it's probably from a determinate plant, which it wasn't indeterminate, it was determined. So they typically will hold a little bit longer in storage. And then also just your environment inside matters too, you know, like wherever you stored it was probably perfect. You know, there's a lot of variables, you know, that you could try to reproduce, you know. Do you remember the name of it?
no, because it was advertised as cherry tomato. I bought
Yes,
the plant.
sometimes the cherry tomatoes they get big.
Yeah,
You know, so it's a
yeah.
it's a little bit of a gray area, like, you
Yeah,
know.
they were like this.
Oh yeah, that's pretty big.
But the picture showed, regular.
Like a cluster looking. Oh yeah. Well, mislabeling happens. It happens.
Yeah.
It happens to the best of us.
Because, no, it was a pleasant surprise. It was
Yeah.
nice having tomatoes in December.
Yeah, I'll have people take, you know, a label or a label will fall and we won't know what it is then. So we have a little table there with like, we don't know what it is. It's going to be a good tomato, but, and then I'll take some, you know, dollar off or whatever because we don't know what it is. But, and people like now they come for those. They're like, I want the cheap dollar off and I know it's going to be good. So I don't have to worry about it. But, yeah, labeling is, you know, it's a tough game in the nursery business.
Yeah, no, I bought two plants, the same labeling, and one was cherry tomatoes and one was this strange plum plant.
Mhm. So the point for me is try some different things. Get out of that red tomato zone, grow some reds, but grow some browns and purples, grow some yellows and oranges and multicolors, grow some cherries, grow some salad, mix it up, you know. Don't try green zebra. It's a small tomato. That'll hold for a long time in your house. It's got these little stripes on it. Um, you know, sometimes the funky weird ones. Abe Lincoln, if you can get Abe Lincoln, that's a really good plant. Um, Ones things that are popping in my head, like just can't live without them kind of tomatoes. I think I hit most of them. Rose, rose tomatoes good. Usually in Johnny's has rose. Um, Man, I I keep saying I'm going to stop growing so many, but I end up growing about, by the time I'm said and done, I probably have like 60 varieties of tomatoes at my stand. Like I don't know what happened. I have a problem, and I always grow so many more than I can sell because I just, like you can buy a packet of seed, but if you buy like 200 seeds, it's cheaper, So I'm like, I don't need 25 seeds. I need 75, but then it's cheaper if I get 200. And the next thing you know, I just got tomato plants everywhere. So, find a good source. I'm gonna tout myself. I have beautiful tomatoes, a lot of varieties. Matt's Organic Garden down in Dennis is probably your next best spot to get some interesting, cool stuff. But Bayberry and Agway, they'll all have stuff. Oh yeah. So, you have High Mowing. Oh, I was gonna bring that catalog too. Um, High Mowing Seeds is in Vermont. So there's some great things. Years ago, we started the first seed library in Cape Cod. It was in Truro, but now we have one in Provincetown. We have one in Wellfleet. We have one in Eastham, and here, I don't. You guys are in the room. You can see it, but over here, maybe you can see it. We have some beautiful flowers, and we have some vegetables, and they are free for the taking. So it's a real benefit to go to any one of these seed libraries and support them. Um, I don't know your situation, but I know in Truro, a lot of them come from Fedco seeds, and they donate them. So it's a good thing for them. It's a good thing for us. Back in the day, we had a lot of seed swaps. Do we still do seed swaps? We haven't done that in a while. So seed swaps, I would save some seeds and I'd bring them in, and someone else would bring some seeds in, and there's a Portuguese bean that's from Provincetown that the old timers had. So that was getting passed around for a while, but some dent corn from the Wampanoag tribe.
And then you said that you attend the farmers markets and you sell your product there. When do you think that you would have your tomatoes available?
My tomatoes will be available May 15th.
15th.
Yep, at my stand, which is in Truro on a Holsbury Road. Yeah. Or you can come to the farmers market, the Truro Farmers Market or the Wellfleet Farmers Market. I may have some out earlier, but I typically May 15th is when I try to get them all out because by May 15th, we're good to go. We used to be Memorial Day, but like May 15th, I know you're going to buy my plant and it's not going to get frosted on. I'm confident of that now. But if you want to try something earlier, well, all the nurseries will have stuff way early now. Like everyone's getting tomato plants in April, so they're buying from the big nurseries and selling it that way. But start your own seeds. You can get things you can't get at nurseries. You can try different varieties that you're never going to get at any nursery around here. Give it a try. There's a seed. What is your seed thing?
On the 20th, so.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna come up closer so that they can hear me.
Yep.
On the 20th, we are having a seed container program with Donna Cooper. We're gonna provide some of the seeds here, and you can bring your own seeds, and we're also gonna have seed starting soil. We are gonna have some containers available, and so you can also bring your own too if you have any questions. And Donna Cooper is a master gardener, so you probably, if you have a question, she'll probably be able to help you with that.
What time?
That's on the 20th.
What
That's at 5:30, I believe. Let me just double check. Yeah, 5:30, Thursday, March 20th, and I have flyers and you can check it on our calendar as well.
And Donna knows what she's talking about. I just did a seed starting class. Was that 2 weeks ago I did that?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. So you missed out on that one. But start your own, give it a try. Follow all the prescribed methodology, and don't just think that the light in your window is going to be enough. You're going to need a grow light if you really want to get it going. If you really want a good tip, you want bottom heat, a heating mat, another good thing to get seeds started. Tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, 6 to 8 weeks before you plant them out. Okay. Peppers, definitely 8 weeks. Okay. So just count back, and that's when you start. Okay. I think integrated pest management, but I never got around to that. So biological controls is like beneficial insects. You hear everyone say about, ladybugs, which are really called lady beetles, but they're not a bug, they're a beetle. Yeah, they eat some aphids. It's actually the larvae are called aphid alligators. These cool little like black, look like a little alligator with a little orange stripe on the back. Those are the ones that really eat the aphids. Okay, like a lady beetle really is not eating many aphids at all. A few here and there, but an aphid alligator, the larvae will eat thousands of them. I mean, just crazy. But if you look at beneficial insects, you can order them in the mail. Green lacewings, nematodes, beneficial nematodes, aphid alligators, cinch bug. There's all sorts of things you can get. Harlequin bugs that you can buy, sprinkle them around your garden and let them start to populate. If you give them a couple of nice flowers where they have some right amount of pollen and nectar, then they have what's called an insectary where they can raise their young. And you get a nice little cycle where you've got, you've got the babies being born and the mom's happy and laying the eggs, and they're going to go out and eat all the bad bugs. So one of the cool things, if you look up tomato hornworms, you'll see the trachid wasp will lay its eggs in the back of a tomato hornworm, and there'll be these little white eggs that are all in the back of a hornworm. So if you go in your garden and you see the hornworm, it's got all these little white things on there, don't kill it. Just take it off your plant, bring it away somewhere, and let all those little microscope, like really minuscule, small wasps hatch out, and then do the more and more around there. So encourage biological control when I have it on this thing here is mainly encouraging having the right flowers, which probably have some over there, but like the right flowers. Beneficial insectary is what you want to think about. Grow some flowers for the beneficial insects, give them a place to rear their young and make a habitat. And if you can get that cycle going your whole, like year after year after year, you can really cut down on spraying anything, and you'll be able to do it with just beneficial insects. What else did I have in there? Pesticide treatments, when necessary. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that I think is, yeah. So I'm gonna, thanks to Provincetown Library.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you coming. Thanks to all of you on Zoom. I want to thank all my teachers, and I want to thank all of you guys for attending. I'm a Vajrayana Buddhist, so I want to thank and dedicate all my educational efforts to all sentient beings. May they use this information to create a better community and planet. And that is the end. But any more questions, I'm totally willing to answer more.
Well, climate change, I planted it last year, I planted spinach in the first week of March.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm just gonna buy your tomatoes.
Yeah, it's a good way to do it. Yeah. But you're gonna bury the stems now.
You,
Yeah.
you don't sell at the Provincetown farm.
I no longer do it now.
Oh, okay.
No, I helped start it, but I don't do it
Is it too
anymore.
expensive or?
It's not that it's too expensive. It's too much of a hassle to come into P-Town on Saturday for me when I can just be in Truro, It's hard to leave Truro, really, I I love P-Town. Don't get me wrong. I lived here a long time. I've been here a long time, but I do love it. But
You're like a local, we avoid the downtown as much.
yeah, I don't need to, I'm a wash ashore, but I don't need to, you know, but there are some great people, Bala and Degree and David, the Nepalese family, do this market here. I highly encourage you to support them. Their plants are great, so they'll have tomato plants for sale too. I really don't know of anyone else that has tomato plants for sale.
What's the last name again?
Bala and Degree, their last name is Ray, Rai, and David is their son. They're from Nepal. So they're the only Nepalese farmers you'll see at the Provincetown Farmers Market. And David speaks English. So yeah. She'll be sitting there making bouquets of flowers. Degree will be. They're great people. Their farms in Truro. And we really help get them going, to support. There's now 13 small farms in Truro, you guys. It's like pretty cool. More than any other town, including Falmouth, where there's a lot of farms down there. So, encourage you all to go to the farmers markets and support everybody because, that's how we make our living. So
What's the total acreage or?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a
Yeah.
good question. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Everyone's what we call market gardeners, small gardeners. I have one of the larger farms. I have about 3.5, 4 acres in production, and then I have about 20,000 square feet of greenhouses.
Wow.
Ball and Degree have a really big garden now. They're probably about pushing 2 acres. Murph at Nestwood Farm is probably pushing an acre. And Stefan Boz is Out There Organics in Truro. They're a little over an acre. Um, Everyone else is pretty much under an acre that I can think of. Yeah. But if you put it all together, we got a lot of food, you know. And for the most part, you know, I try not to grow all the things that bond, you know, I personally try to, and there's a few of us that kind of go, I'm not gonna grow all those things because Murph is growing all those things. So I'll grow a few different things. I'm pretty much known for my salad greens.
Mhm.
That's pretty much my MO, and my tomatoes, you know. So, you know, Murph is really known for his summer squash and his Napa cabbage, and you know, everyone's got their little thing. You know, Stephanie at Rhine is really known for her potatoes. I mean, she just grows the most amazing potatoes. You know, so
I like growing garlic, not for the garlic, but for the chives.
for the garlic chives, you mean,
Yeah.
or the
And
scape?
The scapes,
Yeah, the scapes. Yeah.
They'll last until, well, with global warming, a couple of years they just grew all the way through winter, and they're great in salads and tomato soup.
Yeah, that's probably chive. Probably garlic chive.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought they were the same thing.
No, yeah. Garlic scape comes from a hardneck garlic.
Oh, no. This
It's
is
a stem that comes up. It's the flower bud. It
No.
swirls like a little pig's tail. And
No, they're garlic chives.
it's like that's what we eat. Or first we get the garlic scapes, and then later we get the garlic. Yeah.
No, they're garlic chives.
I like growing garlic because you plant it in the fall when there's no mosquitoes and it's cool out, and then it kind of grows, and it's really easy to weed, and it's like, you know, you put a lot of mulch and you don't have a lot of weeds. So I can be lazy that way too. So any other questions? Anyone else? You're all good?
Thank you. so
You're
much.
welcome. Oh, I got it under 2 hours. Thank you all. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of your attention and questions. It's been great. And like, find me if you have any other questions. You know, I'm pretty easy to find. So, yeah.
See,